As you see from the title, it's the user experience evaluation methods. So methods really very sticky issue. So you'll know later why I say that. So I think I've seen some of you, I've met some of you before in other event tutorial. So maybe at least 4 or 5 I recognize the face, but I'm very poor at remember the name. So please forgive me if I cannot remember the name. So actually, the slides I'm going to present is not my own personal contributions. There's several collaborators. This course was delivered in 2013. So at that time was a very popular tutorial at that time. So it's actually at that time was led by Effie Roto from Aalto University and also some other collaborators. You can see the name there. So and some of the slides I may not be able to share because of the copyright issues, but I try my best to share as many as possible to all of you. So last Friday I was not here, so maybe I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So and where and who I am now. So I have actually from all my bachelor up to PhD of psychology, not because of the Milgram studies, I'm not that interested in that study, but I'm just curious about human thinking. So basically I'm in cognitive psychology, not in the social psychology. So but all my way is in this training. So and I started in around 2000, year 2000. I worked on the usability. So this is one of the course action I coordinate. So one of the so-called major outcomes is this book on maturity usability. It's 2008. So I still have quite some copies in my office. If you're interested, just send me an email and I can really send it to you. It's quite a happy book. So and then shift to the 2006. As some of the researchers in usability, we shift the focus or somehow call a new research area called user experience. So in the later slide, I will explain a little bit what's the difference. So at that time, a lot of activities around from 2006 up to now. So still, but then if you look at the program 2014 Kai, the term user experience is less conspicuous as the previous years. Something now replacing user experience. So I don't know what exactly, but there's still different so-called areas emerging now, replacing or strengthen the user experience research. So and actually I still have dual affiliation. So my primary affiliation is the UK, but I still have a connection with the ETH Zurich. So I'm still a visiting researcher there. So, and my affiliation in UK is University of Leicester. So some people say, where is Leicester? So Leicester is, still pronounced Leicester, not Leicester. Before I went to UK, I pronounced it also Leicester. But it's a strange way of pronunciation, it's Leicester. So it's somehow in the heart of England, sort of the name as such. So, and then you can see London south of us, and the west is Birmingham, Nottingham is here, and further north is Manchester. So this is where Leicester is. Relatively small, only 300,000 people there. But there are 2 universities, and it's in Leicester, and one of them. So okay, this is all about myself. So now going back to the main topic, how to evaluate user experience. So as Yeti, I have a very detailed and clear explanation about the questionnaire. There's no need for me to elaborate anymore. So, but there's also other kind of a way to evaluate user experience, observation, and quite a lot of the time we ask the self-reporting during the field studies when they go out to observe how the people use mobile phone. In some means we can ask them to self-report and analyze the data. And in the lab we use a different instrument to help us to analyze. Like the phrase reader, I also will give you more about this later on. Just give you an overview and what we can do to measure or develop user experience. So, and this is the scope of this tutorial. So, somehow I give you a very broad overview about the UX method, and then I give you some examples. Because there's so many, I can just highlight several to just give you a flavor what can be out there, what types of methods are out there, but still cannot give you a very concrete prescriptive way how you choose it. but you can see the nature, the different, about the properties of different methods, and you think which one will fit your needs. So then, as I said, I will part one give the overview, and then have a small exercise, and then part two, I'll give the example of different types of UX-EM, the user experience evaluation methods. So we can see this is the list example. Because this is developed by somebody else, some other researcher, I can just give you some second-hand information how we understand this method. So of course, the best way is to go back to read the original descriptions created by this other researcher. So now going to the very basic about why we evaluate. So there are different goals and objectives. So you can either, it's a summative, you measure UX, you want to get a score because you want to report to your CEO, your manager. So you claim you improve a product, but give me a score, how you improve it, how much you have improved it. So some quite pragmatic reason, we have to measure, give some number. Or you want to see rather the requirement you set right in the beginning before you develop a tool. You say the tool will really make the user very excited, make them very so engaging, and make them feel good. But then you have to really evaluate whether these requirements fulfilled. And maybe you also want to compare several design. So different design, different options. Use the same method and then compare the score rather than one is really better than the other. So, and you may be the formative is you want to find some diagnostic information, how to improve your product or your prototype. So, and you maybe want to understand why certain emotions appear. If you want to develop a game, you want it to be an exciting game, but turn out your player feel very bored. So you want to say to find out why they feel bored. So your game does not fulfill the requirement. This is the way you find the improvement. How to why the reason why, maybe not the how, but you want to understand the reason behind. And somehow you can say though what you cannot evaluate, you cannot improve. So this is why we always do the evaluation, test and retest and redesign. This is this cycle. So, and look at the term, maybe you're more familiar with the usability evaluation method, the UEM, but now you have one more X between the U and E. So why is it different from the usability evaluations? But basically, the UX is, we focus on how a person feels about using a system. Not only the pragmatic reason, rather you can fulfill the goal of doing certain tasks, but we will also care about how they feel about it. So, and also beyond, you also have to include, but also go a step beyond the pragmatic utility and usability. You don't just measure the task completion rate or the task on time or number of errors. You also care about how users, the feelings, or what is the emotional response. So it's somehow quite subjective. If I say I'm happy, I feel excited, or I feel bored. So this is quite, you cannot tell whether I'm telling you truth or telling you a lie. So this is a very subjective response. But of course, there's some objective way to measure it. So, and more holistic, somehow this is also an argument, rather experience can be broken down. So now I can tell you I'm nervous because I'm presenting a talk, but maybe breaking down, I have other kind of feeling as well. But I just give you holistic, now I feel excited because I present a talk in front of a group of PhD students. So, and this somehow is a long term in the way that, because emotion is quite so-called short-lived, so at this moment, maybe I'm using a product, I feel happy, but after using 3 weeks, I think that product is actually, this game is very boring. So, but then for the user experience evaluation method, we tend to, if possible, we tend to do an evaluation on a long term instead of a short term. But of course, for some reason, maybe you also have to measure it on a short term basis. So, because we have quite a long discussion about what is UX, what is the nature of UX studies, and what's the phenomenon. So all this is captured in the white paper that Yeti also involved. So you go to this website, you can see the white paper. So I will not go through in detail. There's still a lot of discussion about what's the difference between UX and usability, for example. can be another tutorial. But anyway, so I still give you one important thing about the definitions. So there are different definitions of UX. So actually, up to now, from the paper we published in 2009, up to now 5 years, is still not yet a common definition. But actually, maybe some people say that we don't want one, we don't need one eventually. So, but anyways, ISO in 2010, they have UX definitions. It's a person perception and responses that result from the use and the anticipated use. You don't have to really interact with the product. You just see the product. There may be some experience already aroused in the user. So this is there are also 3 notes following this ISO definition. I don't put it here. It's quite a long one. But this is the so-called standard way of defining UX. But there's also different. If you Google, you can at least find 16 of them. So this is the Hassenthal and Tudinsky in 2006. Originally, it's a very long one, but I'll just highlight the 3 so-called dimensions they emphasize. It's involve a user internal state. So of course, involve an interactive system, and also the context is very significant. So in understanding the experience aroused in doing, interacting with the system. So Nielsen and Norman, they have more from the industrial perspective. So this one, I can skip the previous slide, look at this. So they emphasize the simple, elegant, and also they focus on a joy to own, a joy to use. This is what they think the user experience should focus on. So, but if you go, most of us now, very quickly, you go to Wikipedia to find the definition of some terms. So the Wikipedia, so they say UX highlight the experiential, the affective, meaningful and valuable aspect of human-computer interactions. So all these terms are pretty vague. So, but you can say experiential, actually most of us will think about is emotional aspect of interactions. So of course, this again, the relation between UX and usability. Now, still in this definition, you can see UX is a big thing, and then usability is a subsumed, is actually subsumed by the UX. So it's a little bit go beyond UX, but as I said, the relation with UX and usability can be another discussion. So just give you a flavor that there are many different definitions of UX still out there. So, but the key is that we focus on the feeling and emotion of the user when they're interacting with the system. So about the method, so is there any so-called killer method that we must use that method when evaluating UX? The answer is no. So there's no one killer method exists for all purpose. It's really, remember the previous definition, context is very important, depends what system you are going to evaluate and with whom. So you can see more about this later. So select the right method for your evaluation case. So maybe for your group project, you also have to think about what method you're going to evaluate for the product you're going to develop. So if a pragmatic reason, so in the industry, maybe you have to convince the manager, so why solution A is better than solution B. So in this case, quite normal, you give a number to your CEO to convince them. So also I watched a video, they interviewed Don Norman. So Don Norman is supposed to be one of the pioneers of the UX research or UX work. So he also always claimed that you have to, by some means, find some number to measure user experience in order to communicate with the manager to convince them they can do something to improve the product. So this is the one way, rather the measure is meaningful, and rather the measure is somehow easy to measure, to give some result in your report. So, and for example, you want to, for example, actually game is a quite a typical example when you talk about user experience. And also some people claim that because of games, that's why games need a different way to measure, different games to evaluate that trigger the movement of user experience. So this may be one of the reasons, but maybe not the whole reason why UX emerged, because people are also aware that just focus on practical, pragmatic measure is not enough. So people emotion is also very important. So and this is the combination of methods, just like And yet he also say questionnaire cannot be just used alone. We have to use other method together with questionnaire. This is called the triangulations to make your conclusion more solid, to make you have more valid so-called implications or inference from the results. So, and for example, maybe you want to measure the game moment by moment if possible, but after playing the game, you also have the post-test questionnaire, maybe interview them instead of using questionnaire, or do some observation at the same time. So this is a kind of a different technique to enable you to draw solid conclusions. This is the method triangulations we want to argue. So maybe Yeti will again say this because we now compare the academia need and the industrial need, and these are the impact on the way we do evaluations. So academia normally we have the missions or the vision to understand the phenomenon. So if the people play games, why they feel so excited, so addictive, so totally absorbed. So and then our goal is to understand this emotional response. So but for the industrial purpose, maybe they just focus. If the user feel not that excited about the game, so they want to improve the product to make it even more exciting. So maybe they don't care about why, but they want to understand how to. But actually, two things linked together. You cannot improve the product without understand why to some extent. So and it's a matter of emphasis. So and for the industry, they want to find methods really quick. They can get the results. But academia, we want to find the validated methods, like as you see, the scales. The scales have been tested thoroughly, and you know why you're asking certain questions, so and so. But industry maybe pick some method that are easy to use and easy to get results. So actually, we have conducted studies in 2011 to. At that time, we conduct a survey to ask the industrial people how they apply usability evaluation method, not the UX method, but actually they're quite high over that. So you were quite, at that time, the results we came back, we were quite surprised how the industrial people really streamed down the method that we developed in the academia in order to get faster results. So they, some of the steps they skip, or some of the steps they really much simplified. So you can see they have under different time scale. Maybe academia will have much longer time to do the data collection, to do the data analysis. So yeah, this is the time scale. Make us also choose different methods. So and then for the academia, we also have a big, well-planned study. So a large scale study, but in contrast. So in the industry, we have a more small iterative, because they aim to improve the product. So nowadays they use a lot of agile method. So this also the pace of the frequent and small evaluations. So and normally in academia we use the control variables study in the lab, but now more and more we move out to go to the field studies. But in industry, so most of the time you want to see the product how they use in real life. So the real life content is more preferable. So then in academia, so we have a team of UX experts, but in industry normally it's because of the cost concern, and the UX people maybe only draw in the last step of project development. So maybe some of the more so-called larger enterprise, they have money maybe to engage the UX expert from the beginning to the end. But if a small, medium enterprise, they may only employ or sometimes no money at all to engage the UX expert. So, and the skilled researcher versus the UX evaluation often outsourced, as I explained. At the end, they ask somebody to give, or in the beginning, maybe they also already ask the opinion, but in the middle of the development, the UX expert may not be there. Until the end, they draw in the outsourced expert opinion again. So this is just a very brief contrast, may not be all applicable to all situations. So, and before you choosing a specific method, decide whether you want to get a score, what is your goal, or you want to get an improvement suggestion. So this is you did somehow influence the way, or influence which method you're going to use. So you conduct a study in the lab, on the field, or use online. So now more and more tools enable you to do the studies online. So do you want run the test in one or more locations? So somehow if you want to compare, let's say, cultural factors on the use of a specific system, you may want to conduct in more across country. So, or you run the test with lots of users or just a few of them. So of course, if you lots of users, probably you will choose questionnaire. So but if you're a handful of them, maybe you can do interview or very close observation. So actually, you can see if you're familiar with the usability evaluations, this kind of considerations is quite similar for the UX as well. So maybe the guidance for making a decision, maybe your boss, the manager, say, if you have some specific preference of certain method, they may somehow ask you to use this and that method. Your freedom will be limited. But if you're a researcher, somehow your freedom of choosing method may be bigger. So, and depends on what the cooperative culture is. So, and you assume, so you have to know your evaluation needs. Then this kind of, the slides I show later on may help you to find a method. The we is a royal we, that means in general. So this kind of resources may help you to choose method. But in the end, this is very important. You know your evaluation needs first. Otherwise, this information may not lead you anywhere. So this is an example that actually is a Effie student. So she developed a personal health service. So these are the prototype, the storyboard that she has drawn and some sketching there. So then this is the attribute that she considered, and this is the value of this attribute. So first the product, she wants to develop a mobile app. So using iPad as a pharmacy, so the app can help her, help the client to find information about the product on the shelf. So the design stage, you can see this concept design. She has not write a single code to implement this app. So, and now the product representation is a storyboard. So the purpose is for the find the best concept for personal health service. So she already wants to evaluate at this stage. You can do evaluation at early stage. So now it's just a concept design, nothing executable, but still you can do evaluations. So the study location is the meeting room. So maybe she gather some people who may have some knowledge about this kind of healthcare system or personal health service system. So give her some feedbacks, so and so. So for young pharmacy customer, mothers, young adults, so what are these people, what are the requirements? If this have a personal health service, what do they want in this app? So the time restriction, she just has 3 weeks to finish the evaluations. So, and then the equipment is an audio recorder, assistant for note-taking, and the skill of researchers, the MA student, she just have a new media student. So these are all the attributes you consider if I have this constraint, so to say, which method will you choose. So this is the thing. This is the first small exercise. So now give you the example. Describe a situation in which you are in need of a UX evaluation method. So the first step is think about the situation, your evaluation needs. So these are the attributes, the product, design stage, product representation, so and so. So these are the examples. So maybe for your participant, you need 3 captains to know what kind of product you develop. So maybe you need a keys for the parent or visit our website. So then, yeah, let's go to this small exercise first. So you pair up in groups, 2 of you. So then, you think about a scenario or a situation you need to evaluate, use experience, and then write and fill the table about the product or these attributes. So I'll give you about 5-10 minutes to do this exercise, or maybe 5 minutes enough. But the most important thing about a scenario that the 2 of you get one paper. So this is exercise 1. So we can discuss what situation we are going to do the UX evaluation and then try to complete the table.
You're a team, I think, okay?
This this example on your printout. Also have some examples. So you think about the situation. Now you're going to evaluate the links.
Yeah. So first you have to pick the product.
You want to evaluate?
This is my alarm. Can you have it? Sounds cool. I wake up alarm is still with me. So I'm walking around the
Maybe you like the concept, maybe you want to like a prototype. But does the tablet have the app, or does it have a prototype, or maybe just paper mock-up? So a functioning
yeah, right. So we don't have there are actually quite a lot of different kinds of varieties. Maybe we should give them say, okay, this is
Five students, 4 or 5 students, and then
If it's like a concept
They also use this.
like if you're just evaluating then I guess, but I don't know how you call it, like the name is just kind of I guess they just to give them yeah, maybe if it's already on the market,
This is also this is not the final version. It comes out.
maybe
Because you want so.
yeah, we want to point
I don't think for the prototype you don't want too long time because you want to move forward to the final product. But on the other hand, if you have if you want to
Okay, how many of you have already completed table?
you want to turn it and
Give you 2 more minutes.
yeah, or you can for an hour. Do you think it's possible in the lab? Because I would immediately think we should just kind of just keep them up. We might think so. I mean, like, analysis of their own device.
Okay, maybe now we should stop because we still have some reporting to go on. But I would like 2 groups to report what they have filled in the table. Are there any volunteer to report about the table and the complete?
Yeah.
Any want to report about it? Maybe this group? Yeah, you finished quite early, I noticed. Can you please stand up? So can you please listen to the reporting? Yeah.
So we decided the product is like a web service, so something like a social network, and it's at the concept design stage, and product representation is not even storyboard, so we set sketches, if that's okay. Then the purpose of evaluation is finding design alternatives. So best design alternatives. So we are still searching. Then the study location is usability lab because we don't really have like an online service made yet, so we can have an online study. And then participants are a very general term of young people.
Young people? How young is young?
Like 15 to 27.
Okay.
I mean, that's not young people, that's just like people who we would have in the study.
Okay.
The more specific. And then time restrictions, well, 1 week, actually 3 days, or how many do we have? Till Thursday. And then equipment and tools are pen and paper.
Okay.
So not very high tech. And then skills of researchers, or just students from different areas.
Okay. Good. So another group want to report?
We were thinking about mobile app, which is to be precise Foursquare, or if there are some Foursquare users, you might be noticed that they recently removed one of the old Foursquare features, which is check-in, and there are some complaints about that. So we thought about researching this mobile app. So design stage is already on the market for 5 years. It's just one year release. So purpose of evaluation would be to evaluate this last product release, user experience. So how people really like that something is removed from that. And study location probably would be participants' daily locations where they use that, you know. And then participants would be, we kind of identified 3 groups, which could be like the Foursquare existing users, then there's the new Swarm app users, and then there are those users who use both apps because one function was removed from Foursquare to move into Swarm. Yeah, that's the same. And time restrictions, we thought about 2 weeks because we want to follow like half a day for each participant, and we thought that for 3 groups we should take 5 persons per group. So that would be 15 participants and could take up to 2 weeks. Equipment tools, well, we should probably have some kind of logging tool because they are using apps and switching between them, and of course some notes. And skills of researchers, we thought about like having a bit more experienced researcher, like UX researcher, HCI researcher.
Okay, thank you. So, but for what is the emotional aspect of your app you're going to develop, to evaluate?
Well, we want to build on trust, so we want people to share their events and people to go to events of basically strangers, but like not big events, but more private stuff. So we really want to build on this trust connection from both sides.
Okay, I see. How about your app? So what kind of emotional aspect you want to really focus on?
It's about enjoying sharing this kind of emotion and to avoid annoyance, which has been experienced by this particular participant.
Okay. Okay, the enjoyment and the trust. So now they name 2 of the so-called experiential aspect of using an app. So you can also name a lot of experiential so-called aspects. So now I present some cases. So there are 3 cases. One is in the industrial context, one is academic context, one is a mix of both. So look at the case 1. It's a UX consultancy project in industry to test a prototype. And the case 2 is a research project in academia. They want to study the product market everywhere. So, and the third project case is a joint research project. Is a UX, the industry and academic work together. So, just briefly describe this, not briefly. So, just show you this the case. So, no, we won't go into detail because of the time. So this project is Anna is a UX expert. So she used to be expert, but now she's working in UX consultancy company. So this is a small company, and the client asked them to evaluate an app on vitamin informations on use in a pharmacy. So the client wants to test the usability of the vitamin informations and its potential to improve the service experience. So the service experience may be, as you this group mentioned, the trust. Can I trust information presented by the app? So this is a one type of experiential aspect you may want to test in addition to usability. Rather, it's easy to use. The customer make a lot of errors when using the app, but on top of it, you want to measure all the trust in the app, the credibility of the information. So, but it's not specified here about this requirement, but you can interpret from the situation. This may be one of the components of trust. So, unannounced of 1 day to formulate an offer for the clients here to describe what she's going to do to evaluate this app and so and so. So, and describe the evaluation process on very high level, so only 1 day. So she excited to learn about UX evaluations, which the company would like to do more and want to see which UX evaluation method they're going to use. So, and this is one of the scenario that if you receive a client contract, so they want you to evaluate the app like this. So this is normally they have very short period of time to do it. And the case 2 is a research project, academia studying existing product on market, the Angry Bird game. So then this group of researchers, now they have more time, usually academic, because we have to evaluate the stuff thoroughly and write the paper, so we do everything we can. So they want to know the gameplay experience at Angry Bird over time. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, normal user experience, we want to track the experience over time, whether they change. Because especially for game product like that, maybe the first day you play it, you're very excited. But over the weeks or months, the novelty effect die down, and then you may not evaluate again, you may find the game not exciting anymore. So then they want to study the Angry Bird players over 4 months with a sample of 50 players per country. You can see the scale is already different from the previous case. We have much longer time, and also the number of players involved is much larger. So this is enable them to compare the studies and get the results. So this is far too much for you to read. So this is a joint research project, compare the UX of early design ideas. Basically, these are 4 designs, so-called design options. So you want to see which option is best for the target groups. So the target group is very clearly specified. It's a 6 families with young children, the youngest 8 to 15 years old. To see this idea is an emotional response of about the teen. They want to develop something for the So this is somehow to compare the 4 design. This is also go back to the master thesis. So she developed 4 storyboards. So remember, she invites some people in the meeting room, they discuss this, and then they try to elicit their requirements from the family, what kind of emotion response or what kind of usability requirement they want this product eventually can deliver. So just to give you a flavor, so these are different scale and size of project, and can involve different types of methods or different needs. So then, this is a very an overview of the UX evaluation method. But now going back to more detail about the types of method is available out there. So and basically we have actually written up a paper based on the data collections. This is the source of data we collect, and then we found from all these academic, and also we have done some online survey. We found 101, not Dalmatia. It's 101 UX evaluation methods. But then there's some duplicates, some incomplete descriptions. So finally, we found 80 UX evaluation methods, and now all published in All About UX's website. But not very detailed, but just give you an overview what are the methods out there. And then we categorize them according to these attributes. So who are the participants of the study? So can be expert, it can be user or user groups. So the time restriction, as you fill the table, some of you mentioned that several days or maybe several months, depends on resources you have. The expertise required, so what kind of skill of a researcher or a practitioner required to conduct a study. So are you going to do it in the lab, in the field, or do it online? So rather you need the quantitative data or qualitative, or ideally it's both. So, and the period of experience, rather you measure moment by moment experience, or you want to measure episode, I will explain more about it later, what is this difference, or overall, or over time. So, and the product development phase, you have the storyboard, or you have already executed prototype, or the ready product, you can evaluate the experience. So there's always an argument that can a storyboard, if you present a storyboard to your potential end user, can you already predict the experience, but just looking at the storyboard of the product just you showed previously. So this the predictability of user experience is something we are still researching on. But anyway, I will go through it in more detail later. This is the slide about the different phases. So then, like the game is, I already mentioned, it's a very typical example when you measure the user experience. So moment by moment, when you're playing a game, so if you can stop the gamer every single, maybe 5 minutes, ask them how you feel, or what is your emotion at that time, you can imagine what problems are over there. So, but this is the moment-to-moment measurement. Episodic, there's a quite clear beginning and end, we call an episode. Let's say maybe you work on a quest in a game, this one quest may be 15 minutes or 10 minutes sometimes. So then when you finish the one episode, one quest, then you ask the player, give some feedback or fill up some questionnaire or interview them. A long term is maybe several months or even up to 1 year after they play the game, they will share with you how do they feel about the game. So what method you can use under these three categories? So for the moment to moment, of course, if you sit next to the gamer, he or she playing the game, you observe how his body movement. Is to lean forward towards the game console, or she just lie back, maybe feel bored, or sometimes he just sigh when the game is so bored, he have to sigh, or he laugh a lot, or he look very tense the face. So this may tell you at that time the emotion he experienced. But of course, somehow it's up to the interpretation of the researcher. There may be some universal facial expression, frown, that means he's not that sure about something, what's going on. And smile normally is implied that somebody is happy. So there are some universal facial or body gesture you can interpret, but some are very cultural, also specificity there. So the moment earlier I talked about this objective or subjective, and it's always so difficult to argue about that. But for the objective measurements, because somehow if I can fake my facial expression, even though I'm very angry, I can still smile. But for the psychophysiological measures, somehow you're not controlled. You cannot control your skin conductance. You cannot control your heart rate. So somehow this is supposed to be very objective because it can give you some data that is the user cannot somehow change it out of their will. Maybe somebody can, I don't know. So, but this is can measure moment by moment. If you wear some kind of sensor, so like some kind like a watch. So now it's quite a smart watch. You can measure quite a lot of stuff about your physical signals. Self-reporting. So as I said, if you can stop the player, ask them some experience or some kind of so-called non-verbal emotion slide that attached to the game. So when playing the game at the same time, he can show you the emotions. But of course, if you talk about game, you disrupt the game experience a lot. You change the experience. So normally, moment to moment, unless you do the observation or some kind of variable sensor, it's quite difficult to measure moment to moment experience, especially you need the verbal, you need the user input. But so that probably we do the episodic. So if the game is 1 hour long, if the game can consist of a quest, so you can stop at a certain point and then ask them to fill a questionnaire or do some short interview, or at the same time, of course, you do the observation. So I think that most of you will know about this think aloud technique in usability, but we add I think in Nokia we have some technique called experience think aloud. So the difference is the user now have to focus to share more about the experience when they play the game, when they're doing the think aloud. So this is just the difference of the matter of emphasis. or long term is maybe a bit easier to do. So if you follow the user over months or weeks or even year, so maybe every 2 months, then you interview them, or somehow do some kind of a log their gameplay. You can also somehow derive their user experience. So this is show you the contrast between different in terms of temporal methods. So and then for the different phases of development, you can use a different so-called design artifacts. So I showed you earlier about the conceptual design, just a sketch, a storyboard. So this group say they have some sketches. But some sketches, somehow you can still ask your user comments on it. But the thing is, of course, if you show the sketches, so they may, I was in a project, develop a game for children. So we really have the storyboard. We already went out to school, asked the kid, there is this game that we are going to develop the game. It's about alien, kidnap a boy and then fly around the world to learn about geography. This is a game we're going to develop. So at that time, we have the storyboard, we went out to the school, and then interestingly, we get some response from the children. So the girls don't like the idea, don't like the alien. But the boys are very excited about the alien flying with the boy. So we can, at this stage, we can capture whether they like the story or not. But about the emotions, at that time, it's very too early because they cannot see them. Maybe based on their past game experience, maybe they play some game alien before, they can tell you the past experience with a similar game, but they cannot anticipate somehow what the game in the future you meet their emotional needs or somehow will make them feel excited about the game. So, but somehow in this case, the storyboard still gets some useful feedback about the gender difference at the time. So, and the conceptual design, so somehow you can also use these emotional expressions, the visual design, and the idea description is also asked about some expert. So you can role play the game design. So you can, at the early stage, you can use this technique to capture some feedback on your design. For the low-fi prototype, somehow you can also use this experience finger as mentioned. So the game or some kind may not be the game, the product is somehow in the not executable, but as there's some interaction element there. So you can ask the potential end user to work with the prototype and give you feedback. So for the functional prototype, is more tools you can use. So as listed here, but I'll go through more about individual tools. So you can see at different stage, development stage, you can have different methods and tools you can use to help you to do the evaluations. So going back to this personal health service, if you remember, so the student developed the storyboard. So then the method type she used, there actually can be a field study, lab studies, or this so and so. But for her, she will choose the lab studies because only the storyboard, you cannot somehow ask the user go to the shop to test the apps. So then for her, obviously, she choose the lab studies. For the development phase, use the scenario sketches is this option here, but for her it's the scenario and the sketches. For the data, because you just want to capture the feedback from the user, so it's a discussions about the idea generation. So it's a more qualitative, no quantitative she can measure. So and study period of experience, she wants to understand about the long term, if the app is used for longer term, so how, what kind of emotions that should be elicited by this app. And then for the evaluators, it's one user at a time or pair of users. So this is the way this student classify the evaluation activities that she wants to do. So this is actually for your game, for your exercise tool, and on your flip side of the paper, you have also this kind of option. So going back to your first scenario, So which kind of method type you're going to use for your scenario that you have developed, and what kind of development phase, what kind of data you capture. Maybe you will have captured both type, qualitative and quantitative, and which period of experience you want to study, and about the evaluative information provided. So just 1 minute you can use this just to choose. I think it's on the flip side of the
Let's see, because we did the twos over here. Only five, right? And certification in Q.
When I get good ideas from the paper.
So let's see. I think we kind of decided to take studies actually we can there. But then we have to give them
Which method categories would you like for your sample situation?
Yeah. It might be easier to interview them than 13 to I think it might be easier. Yeah, but I think it's easier to keep them engaged. I think it's easier to either face-to-face or find them there that they can ignore. Or they can still ignore, but I think on the online study it is quite easier to record. But I think it's like of course, like we see, like from every session from the beginning to the end, and then it's probably
Before we discussed it, right?
it's still qualitative because we
Yeah, I think the exercise 2 is quite easy for you students doing it. Exercise 2. Done the exercise.
Exercise 2 is still doing it, but this was what we discussed.
Any group still want more time for exercise 2?
So I think just give you a flavor how these different factors is considered when you choose a method.
what do they mean?
So now I give you examples. So all the exercise, the two exercises we've done somehow can reflect on this example about the different types of groups. Yeah. Okay. So the different types of methods. So the first type, of course, we'll talk about UX. So we talk about experience sampling, how to capture the experience. So the ESM, actually it's not new, it's already quite in psychology research, experience sampling is quite a long history. So it's ESM actually is not just a single method, it's a set of methods designed to repeatedly request people to document and report their thought, feelings, and action outside the lab. So, and within the context of the everyday life. So, of course, if you want to understand when you use a mobile phone, let's say, so there's a new app in the mobile phone. So if I just log you up in the lab for 1 hour, I cannot understand actually in daily use how we use the app in the normal daily life because you use your mobile phone all the time. So then the way to capture the emotion is use this one of these experience sampling method. So there are two ways. Either every hour you somehow answer a very short questionnaire, or you do the audio recording. Then, after 1 hour using this app, I'll do the recording of how I feel, what is the issue, blah, and blah. So this is so-called the standing request can be time, can be also random, not fixed 1 per hour. Maybe you don't use the app every whole day long. So randomly, as a researcher, I send you a reminder, hey, now is the time for you to report to me how do you feel about the app. So this is quite random, but of course you can imagine quite annoying. So suddenly I get a SMS remind me to enter some questionnaire or do my recording and so and so. Or sometimes can also so-called a critical incident. If you use the app suddenly, you have a strong, intense emotion, or you feel very angry or some reason that you want to report about that experience. This is most so-called a critical incident. So either you regular time, so every hour or every 2 hours, or you randomly send an SMS to the user to ask them to record the experience, or you ask them to choose the critical incident. If they have a certain specific experience with that app, then they do the recording. So next slide, you'll see how they do the recording. So the request and answer can be sent through either, as I said, it's send an SMS message, or even you call them up, hey, please enter your emotions and report into a questionnaire. So, and of course, and this is a really momentary, so it does not depend on recall. You have to rely on the memory, and also provide insight into the variation over time. So maybe in the morning when you use the app, your emotion is very different from the time you use it in the evening or in the afternoon. So, but of course, you require quite high cooperativeness of your end user. So if they may easily feel annoyed and also disturbed by your repeated reminder. So we'll also interfere with the activities. So now and then they get a message, a reminder to fill up the questionnaire. So either when they get the signal or reminder, or they remind themselves, so they have maybe have to fill up a very short questionnaire, or they may do the recording. So they press on the record button. I feel very annoyed by this app, blah blah blah. Or you just take the pictures. Somehow something can show the emotions. So this is the way of one way of the yes and. So this is a real moment. At the moment something happened, then record the emotion at that time. But as I point out, it can be quite disturbing. So, and like this mobile journalism. So when she reports something, she just now instead of verbal, just a couple of the smiley face. Now in the UK airport, now always have this smiley face everywhere. After the custom check, you have to press one of the buttons. It's one way to capture the emotions very easily. No verbal, just graphic. So this is they use a very small attribute. I'll show you later. This is the questionnaire we often use for user experience. So this is the way you can do the yes and. So look at this, the scale you have complete. So actually we classify the method this way. So for this ESM, normally we do a few studies, because just a mobile phone is a very typical example that when you move around, during the daytime you carry your device around. So a few studies, this is very good for the field studies. But no ESMs for the functional prototype, not for the concept. So because for the concept you imagine use the sketches or the storyboard, maybe not that useful for the ESM. So the product on market. So and the study period of time of experience, so can snapshot just at the moment when you interact with the app, or maybe they are not, but they can maybe short period of time after using the app they can record their interactions. They can also have the long-term user experience. Maybe I track the user over using the certain mobile app for weeks. You can use this ESM continuously for weeks. So it's one user at a time, unless your app is somehow you want to the collaborative app, maybe you want to capture as a group, but normally it's one user at a time. So it can be qualitative and quantitative, depends whether you just use questionnaire or you combine the recording, the photo capturing, and maybe even you can ask them to write some comments, free text comment. So the application is all kind of web service, PC, mobile, and hardware design. So, and the requirement is you need a trained researcher. So he or she should know when to send SMS if she wants to not to at a random, maybe on a regular time basis. So the researcher should also be able to interpret what the end user has reported. So special equipment is as tools available. You can see the previous picture. Sometimes you use a special device to do the recording or use the cameras and so. So and then there's time as a ESM. It's called trackyourhappiness.org. There's these tools available. So really, maybe you set it at every 2 hours. The user have to report something. There's an automatic prompt at some time. Or you use the context-aware ESM when, for example, you have this wearable device. So when you, in certain contexts, so maybe the change of light when you use a mobile app outside broad daylight, when you come inside the room, once you change the context, your device will trigger you to report your experience. This can be also one way how you measure user experience when the context has changed. So all these reference you can see on the all about UX. So this is the original ESM. This is the name of the person that let me say it's very difficult to pronounce. So, but as can you imagine, ESM is quite disturbing. As I said, always receive reminder. But there's an alternative called daily construction method. So don't disturb the user, let them use the app as much, as often, or as little as they want. But at the end of the day, you ask them to write a diary. So then somehow you will not disturb their normal activities. It's supposed to be more friendly. And also, according Daniel Kahneman is a very famous psychologist, and he also won the Nobel Prize for economics. So this is actually, he developed this kind of, or have this theoretical framework about the daily reconstruction method. So the difference is, as I said, not moment by moment capture. After the day, everything is finished in the evening. So then you ask the respondent to try to remember what happened in the daytime with this app. So then they write like a really diary. So a sequence of episodes they have to recall from the morning when they get up at the coffee, when they start the app, and so and so. So then they also they argue that this is good because the contextual information is all there. So when they write a diary, maybe in the morning I drink my coffee, then I use this app and somehow give you the context, where and when you use it. So, but of course you can imagine that the problem is the memory effect. The ESM argue because somehow you don't have to rely on the recall, you rely on the memory. But here, this method rely quite heavily on the user, how good they memorize the event. And of course, experience, somehow, if I remember the past event, maybe at that time I really feel happy, but when I recall it, maybe I evaluate the whole thing again, I may say, actually, I'm not that happy. So maybe then we change the accuracy of the report. But there's a lot of discussion, especially about the Kahneman. So he argued that actually all this measurement about the experience, we are reporting about the experience, not the experiencing self, it's a remembering self. So what we report actually already cognitively, whenever you ask people to report the experience, cognitively they already filter out some of the information. So unless you do this kind of psychophysiological measurement, so somehow the signal cannot be controlled by the user. They maybe somehow reflect some true, so-called true response. But at the same time, the psychophysiological measurement, the downside is it's very difficult to interpret. So one standard deviation of the heartbeat may not tell you anything about the emotion of a person. So all these, actually, there's a different way really trying to capture the UX, the user experience. But which one is considered most accurate? I think nobody can answer this question. But at least the theoretical model and empirical work show that the day reconstruction method somehow can produce the results as comparable to the ESM or even better. So I will show you the paper. So Karapanos, he has done this, use the day reconstruction method to measure user experience. Then he argued that actually DRM, the day reconstruction method, is really no problem. So about this memory issues, about the accuracy issues, so in his studies he demonstrates so. So actually, Karapanos, what he did is he 4-week field study on taking the iPhone into use. So he asked 6 participants. Of course, you can argue 6 participants is not that big, but you track them 4 weeks is already quite some work. So then he used this method, asked the participant at the end of the day, and then measure and capture on diary form, and then analyze. There's 482 narratives. Like every day they really like to write a story about the app or about the specific thing they are using. So and then the results show that actually this is quite an accurate method. So-called accurate is in quotation mark. So and let's say this day reconstruction method. So it's a field study. So of course you can go out to when they use the interactive system during the daytime at the end. So they do the reporting. So this can be applied to all kinds of contexts. So we can also do it online. So actually, Karapanos, he developed a tool called iScale. I'll show you later. So you evaluate the functional prototypes. The apps must, or the interactive system must be already in interactive state. So the product on market and also so and so. So I will not go through all this, quite boring. So this is we categorize this method, the reconstruction method. So this is the iScale that Karapanos. So based on the day reconstruction method, the study he has done, so he inspired, why not develop a tool to support the people to reporting? So this is like a scale. This is the purchase, the day they purchase the product. 2 days later, 3 weeks later, maybe even longer. So this is the thing, the scale to measure the experience, the social emotion. So then you can, the user can mark it on which day. Maybe a specific day, they have the change of emotions. So maybe this is the feeling, the positive increase after using certain time, the novelty or the excitement drop down, so and so. So, and also on each point, you can click it, you can enter the comments, so what happened actually on that day. So this iScale is a tool that helped the reporting, and then based on the day reconstruction method. So that I explained in previous slides. So, and this iScale somehow will try to minimize the retrospection bias, but just to minimize, but you cannot eliminate. So how much they can eliminate, but how much they can minimize is difficult to quantify. But this is one way, if you use this iScale on a daily basis, somehow, and also there are 2 ways to capture. Either you ask the user to think in the morning to the day, to the evening, like this order, and then report so. Or you can ask them to just think about the critical incident and then report. But they found that if you ask the user chronological reporting, you can capture more data than just critical incident. So this is what empirical study showed that. So this is the verification study. So, and also compare the iScale with the freehand sketching. So there's another method, it's very similar to iScale, it's called UX curve. So this is by hand drawing. So you can, just like the curve, you draw the curve, how your certain experience change or emotion change, and then you annotate what happened to this special rise and drop. So this is, they compare the iScale to the freehand sketching. Also, somehow they found the iScale can help the user to report better, get more information. So, and the I-scale can help the understanding the long-term lyrics better. And also the sketching can also help the reconstruction of the experience. Of course, again, this really cannot avoid the problem of the retrospection bias, but this is, we have to live with this constraint. So again, we classify the I-scale in this construct. So, and this is the one way the ESM is a big set of methods that you can use in value UX. Another one, I think maybe some of you are already quite familiar with Attractive. So now it's actually Attractive 2, so it's a version 2, or even I think 2, maybe not even 2 or 3. So Attractive actually is this kind of a scale. So it's a pair of contrasting adjectives: interesting versus boring, extravagant versus cheap, and exciting versus dull, so and so. So then this is originally there are 28 pairs of these contrasting adjectives. So if you use a product, you find, or a system, or whatever you evaluate, so you find this product is very interesting, but not extreme, so maybe you make a cross here, or make a mark here. So this is the semantic differentials. This is the way to evaluate. So, and actually, let me emphasize that for this attributes actually measure the product, as actually not reporting the user experience. So this is the hedonic and the pragmatic quality of the interactive product. So this is developed by Hasentau. So, and these have already went through many validation studies. So it's supposed to be very so-called powerful tool. So, and actually the goal is to enable how attractiveness of the product. So as I mentioned, it's not the emotional aspect of the user, it's the product itself. So the so-called the pragmatic quality or the hedonic quality of the product. So the pragmatic quality, you can say, is like the usability, how usable it is, and so and so. The hedonic is more on your emotional side. So the hedonic quality is that the product somehow can give you identification. That means when you use the product, will the people think you're different? So if I use an iPad, maybe people think I'm very techie savvy. If I use an iPhone, maybe people think I'm an Apple fan and I have some different typical characteristic. So this is the tool somehow influence you how to identify yourself. And rather, also the product can stimulate you or make you. There's another dimension. It's called evocation. Rather, it can make you think of the past. So evoke your bad or good memory. So this is the theoretical model underlying the attractivity is interesting. So So this is, but now from the 28 reduced to the 21, and now it's up to the 10 item. So normally when now you use attractive, we use this set. So 4 items for the pragmatic quality. You can see this is so-called the pragmatic quality, the impractical, practical, so and so. And hedonic is these 4 items, and then the goodness and beauty. So goodness and beauty somehow just use 1 item to measure. There's an argument that rather 1 item like this can really capture the construct they're going to measure, but we're not going into details. But this is 10 items in the reduced version, so to say, and have been validated quite recently in 2010 paper. So, and the shortened questionnaire is in the previous, before lunch. So maybe the shortened questionnaire, you can somehow enable or encourage the respondent to answer or to respond the high response rate. So, and this is the work, but now so quite often we use this 10 items instead of the full versions. So this again, this maybe it's supposed to be applicable to all this method type. So when you do the ESM, maybe you can also integrate the attractive questionnaire. So after using a certain period of time, then you send a message to probe the people to respond to the attractive. So this is actually is a commercialized product. If you want to commercialize a product, you do the study and then you send back to the company. They will do the analyze for you, especially when you compare the two products A and B. So you want to understand how the product position with regard to the dimension, the measures. So you can see the product B is covered this area, and product A is higher on the certain dimension. So this is for using comparison of product A and B, or you can also just use a single evaluation for interactive product. So this is one of the way to evaluate UX is use questionnaire, using scale. So and as compared with the usability evaluation, we also have heuristics. Not only from the user side, from the expert, we can also do some so-called analytical tool. So this is the UX expert evaluation with the UX heuristics. So and these heuristics somehow was developed by I think by Kaiser and her student. So you can see that how many of you know about heuristic evaluation? You know that. So yeah. So this is the same principle, but they're using different set of heuristics. So honestly, I don't know these heuristics that much, but there is some kind of playability heuristic I'm more familiar with. It's focused on gameplay. So then you have a different focus about how the game should be responsive, the game has to give feedback. This is the heuristic when you develop the game, so to enhance the user, the gameplay experience, then you use these playability heuristics. So I show it here. So these are playability heuristics, so to guide you when you design the system, what you can have to take care of or have to bear in mind. So there are also so-called immersion heuristics. It's the different set of heuristics now, just for cater the different emotional aspect of the product that you aim to deliver. So this is one way you can do the evaluation. So you can do the UX evaluation with heuristics. And is there any questions so far? Because it's really like a roller coaster to go through many different methods.
Yes.
Yep, sorry.
I came across the problem with those ready prepared methods.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the attractive in original was in German as well.
Yeah.
And Mark translated it himself to English.
Mm-hmm.
But I came with another method which evaluates aesthetics of the interface.
Mm-hmm.
And this was only in German language.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my predecessors translated it into English, and
Mm-hmm.
then I had to translate it from English to Estonian.
Okay.
And it seemed to me that people who read the original German version will understand slightly differently as the Estonian version.
Mm-hmm.
And the study was conducted something like there was a class of people, and I saw the interfaces for evaluation on the projector.
Mm-hmm.
But first round I did myself and showed how and what things to pay attention for.
Mm-hmm.
So there was 28 items in this questionnaire, and this probably involves also the questionnaire design. So when one goes to translate the questionnaire, he probably needs to know how to design the questionnaire.
Yeah, and indeed, in different language domains, words might have a different connotation and a different load.
There was one word which was very misunderstood, or even people didn't know. It was the English word cumbersome.
Oh yes, yeah, that's a cumbersome word.
Yes.
Yeah.
This from the SUS is a cumbersome.
Yes,
From the,
but I meant first the vis-a-vis questionnaire. It's the aesthetics evaluation. The cumbersome in SOS, yes.
Yeah, actually, this is exactly the question that when we presented the tutorial in 2013, Ralph Mollick Do you know Ralph Morley? Yeah, he was in the audience. He asked the same questions.
Oh.
So he said that he criticized that for the attractive, because it's really original in German, translated into English. Some of the work, like say, this tacky. So this word say, how on earth people with a non-native speaker know about this word? So, but Hasentau and Monk in the paper, they say they validate these 10 items with thousands of people. But it seems they have no problem with these difficult words or they. I know. So my response to at that time to Ralph Morley is I say they already done quite a thorough studies, but maybe there is really some cases this word. So how many people know about the word tech?
No.
Yeah, sorry.
Perhaps it's in combination, so techie alone, I wouldn't be sure either.
Yeah,
but
maybe the opposite
having
side.
techie and stylish, and you know it's both end of society.
Yeah, but the problem quite often with semantic differentials is that good, bad sort of usually will work, but for the others, the opposite might still be slightly different.
Yeah.
So that's why semantic differentials are even harder than any other instrument you can create, because the idea is that they're on one dimension, but especially if you translate it, it might suddenly be a little bit more awkward, and that's what you noticed. And we just finished a study using also attractive with Dutch and Chinese users, and we had to translate it for the Chinese users. And the only way we could do that was we still had the English version, because that was something they might be able to work with, and then we had several processes to translate it into Chinese and translate it back and see if we do it. But already the translation process was very difficult, because some of these words do not simply exist in Chinese or have a completely different loading. And we got very mixed results out of the study, and we partly think that that is because some of the concepts in attractive simply in another culture are seen as so completely different that it is not just the translation process alone, it's more than that. And I also have the idea that indeed for the Dutch people sometimes also some of the items are a little bit hard to follow.
I thought about this good and bad thing.
Yeah.
There will not be no problem with translation, but there must be some context added to the good bad, because it has so wide meaning, the word pair good and bad. Is it so?
Yeah, also Yeti also want to ask the opinion. So if the one item has one construct like that, so what is your
Yeah, generally it's seen as problematic.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I think Hasentau argued that it's valid because somehow he has done some previous work before, and the results using one item instead of sub-items, he said the results is somehow comparable or somehow can confirm that one is an
Well, most likely he found it very hard to find additional items that fit in that dimension.
Yeah, maybe.
So he had alternatives. I have seen way earlier versions of the current attractive, and at that point in time there were usually more items, but then they do not well when you use them. So
yeah, in the end he collapsed into just one item. So, but he argued from some statistical data as well. So it's fine.
well, it could, in theory, it could be that a certain dimension indeed can be described by just one item pair. I'm a little bit inclined to say that goodness and beauty might be richer than that, but yeah.
I know, so now Trutinsky and Laville in 2004, they have a paper about the classical aesthetics and expression aesthetics. So they break it down this into many different items. So instead of just beauty and ugly, so yeah. So another way to measure is aesthetic quality. I saw another hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about the classifier those how those categories were developed, because you showed these
Yeah.
check marks. So how did you, if you can comment on that?
Oh, so okay, yeah, good question. So about this.
Yeah.
So when we collect the information, so as I showed earlier, either we from the literature or from our workshops in 2009 or 10. So we asked the people who provide the description of the method, they also take this scale for us. So it's the description of the method and sometimes also the inventor of the method and ourselves to somehow validate each other marking. So it's not based on one person, it's based on the bunch of people behind the paper about the UX evaluation method and the original description of the method. They pick this box and then we try to do some correlations to see rather we are consistent. If we are not consistent, then we discuss rather this is something we understood wrong. So it's a collaborative effort resulting in this chat box. Any other questions? Yeah, I think attributes is really interesting that you raised the same question that Ralph Mike has pointed.
I just have a comment about attractive. The thing is that at least we have that. I mean, you have to have some kind of tools, even if they are not 100% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, you don't do science with that, but for industry, it's good thing to do. Otherwise, they don't do anything, or alternatives might be like too expensive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Partly a problem with questionnaires like this. I think from an industry perspective, it depends very much on where you are in the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
Where I work within Philips, it's very early on in the process, and then questionnaires like this are not really that helpful because they don't tell me what I need to change, in what direction.
Mm-hmm.
They give me a status update, but I would like to have other things that give me more direction. Do I need to develop more in that way or more in that way?
Mm-hmm.
So they usually go more towards qualitative methods still.
Yeah, exactly. But they at least tell you that there's something wrong, so you can you know, show at least that it's not okay, it's not perfect thing, because in industry it's really usual. Some people think that it is perfect and there's nothing you can do for better.
There's a comment.
I think at least from what I've heard from Hassan Saar, he doesn't sell it as he sells it as a way to evaluate after the fact.
Yeah.
He wouldn't argue with you there.
No, I know.
And I think the popularity for the attractive in the industry is probably due to marketing a lot, because I mean he sells it pretty well. The website is better than and the services and the evaluation and the nice charts which are auto-generated are better than pretty much for any other survey I've seen so far.
And some version are free, actually free of charge.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but the professional version which you would use as an industry professional for bigger studies costs money.
Yeah, just
I think it comes down to also with the Facebook thing where they use this kind of tool. It's always important to know the limitations, right? So otherwise you get some kind of results, but do they fit to the questions you had in the first place? So.
Yeah, but this is like when the market is going to commodity. So it's like online user tests. Like you want to have them, you buy, and after an hour you will have like a bunch of videos or something, and you pay for like $50 or something. Like you cannot really say that it's like well done and it gives you, you know, the best possible outcome, but it helps you nevertheless in some sense. So it gives you fast. Usability professionals, like experts who are selling user test which is moderated, this is like really clear competition there. But of course you can get better results to have one-to-one interviews which is professionally moderated than having online tests. But still, this is like going commodity. You know, you have to you need some information, and you select like the easiest way to get them. It's like questionnaires
the most appropriate given all the drawbacks and benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, a good discussion. So maybe this also will have more discussion about the psychophysiological measurements. So as we talk about the objective and subjective. So we say the subjective reporting somehow you down to the user how honest or how self-aware they are about the emotions. Sometimes they have no intention to cheat, but somehow they don't know how to describe the emotions. And somehow the psychophysiological measurements and the advantage is that we cannot control the signal that our body emits in some sense, especially our voice or sound. But so they say this is more objectives, but as I said, on the downside, it's really difficult to interpret or calibrate. So, and the facial expression, I will show you later on about some people really have a poker face, no matter how strong or how less emotional they are. You cannot tell from the face whether they're happy or angry or whatever. So, but anyway, so the common psychophysiological measurement is the heartbeat, the skin conductance or the skin perspiration. The assumption is that our skin will sweat more if you feel excited or scared or whatever. So somehow they can reflect our emotional status or affective status. The facial muscles, also the face reader, now is a commercial product, so can somehow tell the emotional state of a person. So but then it's you need the instrument to either attach to the body or wear on your head to the brainwave, all this. So if you wear this kind of head attached to all these wire, you have to do it in the lab. It's not that. It's quite obtrusive measurement. So, but now getting more and more so-called wearable, so you can carry your sensor or where you go, you can still track your heartbeat or pulse rate, so and so. So the good point is that investigate the momentary experience. As I say, during the gameplay, normally you cannot disrupt the user. You totally destroy the experience when they're playing the game or other situations as well. So the psychophysiological measurement somehow can enable you to do the momentary experience measurement and also maybe sort of more objective, but expensive setup. So, and you need the equipment. Although it's now getting cheaper and cheaper, but another thing is rather they are really accurate or how to calibrate. For example, eye tracker. So eye tracker is now is much cheaper, so and also more accurate. But how can you the eye tracker, the heat map? How can they tell you about the experience of the user? It's difficult. You have to use the triangulation method to measure different things that may enable you to interpret the eye tracking heat map. But anyway, so. Playing the game against a friend and or against a computer. So and then of course when the game normally arouses a lot of emotion. So then somehow they say if you play the game at the same time you measure the skin conductance on the heart rate. You can measure. You can also feel yourself when you play something very exciting. Your heart beat faster. So and this is somehow the psychophysiological measurement may tell you something about the emotional status. But as I mentioned, that somehow the cultural factors, the individual differences is very high. Even I myself, maybe now in this month, I'm very healthy. My heartbeat pattern is very different from the previous month when I'm ill, so and so. So this kind of calibration issue is well known in psychophysiological measurements, and we know this constraint. That's why you cannot use this measurement by themselves. You have to use at the same time with other measurements to, at the end of the day, it's a mixed method. So, but this is one way you can do the measurement. So face reader is the 6 basic emotions by Ekman. So the angry, surprised, sad, happy, neutral, and others. So this is the system when you analyze the facial muscle of this participant, then the face reader can automatically analyze what kind of emotion like this office is not that happy. So you can see that the angry is most of the facial muscle show most of the expression, or the emotion is angry. So another is a little bit neutral, I don't know how to define. So it's a happy, sad, and surprised is a little bit, so it's very small, but dominated by the angry emotions. So as I said, if you have a poker face, this is no use at all. So they claim this is a real-life analysis of the facial expressions from a video. From video, you can do it as well, or live via a webcam. So, and I don't know, so now they just confine to these 6 basic emotions. So, but then you may argue, but also already some criticisms about these 6 basic emotions. It actually cannot capture all of the affective status of human being. But another topic we can explore. So, and so-called objective assessment, but it's really in quotation mark. I can also pretend, as I say, I force myself to smile even I'm not happy. So whether it's objective or not is a question. So, and the data now is limited to 6 basic emotions, as I mentioned. There can be more than that, or already some theoretical argument that basically this 6 emotions is too narrow. So this is some of the data, some kind of data presentation you can see from the face reader. So I myself haven't used it, but I saw a demo in the Thai conference. And so the multidisciplinary application domain, so it can apply in psychology, how people respond to a stimuli. If you present a very scary picture or very pleasant picture, reaching seaside, showing a Tallinn city picture, how the emotion may be very calm or so and so. So the educations, they say if you use a face reader to see rather the student are happy or they feel disgust or they feel what kind of emotion when they're attending the lectures, so they can use as an educational tool. So if the lecturer know that most of the students will feel very angry or feel very bored, then he have to change the way she presents so and so. And this is, again, using the HCI is what we aim to apply. So facial signal can provide valuable information about the lyrics. So, and also use the testing and market research. So this is the way to analyze the user emotion. So, and this is an example about the flower, so-called emotional flower. So, depends how you look at the game interaction. So, depends on the facial expression. So, if the player smile more, you can see more flowers showing in this picture. So, I've never seen it in my life, but it sounds quite an interesting idea. So, the means the more flowers show in this screen, your game is more successful in elicit positive experience or specific experience in the user. So it depends how you set the screen. So this is the paper in 2007 talking about these emotional flowers, but I don't know how accurate it is, but this is fun to look at. So again, this you can see. So because all in about you. So it's about the face reader more. So another thing that you can see scale, you can see the heuristic, you also see the psychophysiological measurements. But another thing is non-verbal, like Getty already talking about the pain using the pictures. But now this is 16. This now is 16, not only 12. This is a pro-emo. This is developed by in the Netherlands. So it's a non-verbal self-report software. So originally it was a paper, now it becomes a software too. So and somehow when you ask the user to describe the emotion, the verbal, so the words they can use are quite limited. But if they see this picture, somehow they can associate or relate it to the figures. So then maybe they're easy to express, or somehow can stimulate them to talk more about the experience. If they show, I look like this guy, then you can tell them, if I look like this guy, I look surprised, why you feel surprised, then you can stimulate them to talk more. So then this is, you don't have to rely on words. The picture can actually sometimes can tell 1,000 words. So and then now it's come to the state. Not only the face can dynamically, the body, and also somehow associate with the voice. So you can use as an internet survey because now it's a web-based tool. And also the formal interview, you show them the figures and then ask them to choose one, and then they say, oh, this figure look like me, my emotion now, reflect my emotion, and they can talk more. So, and this is identify the concept, the most pleasant emotional impact, and so and so. But somehow the figure, if you notice, is a man figure. So my criticism is one of female figure. So there, of course, if you interview a female participant, maybe you want to show a female figure, so they can associate more, related more to the emotion expressed, because somehow we think men, the way men express emotion is very different from women. So anyway, so this kind of my personal criticism. So and each of the 14 emotions, so you show the product, and then you show the emotions. So you ask this question. To what extent do the feeling expressed by the characters correspond with your own feeling towards the stimulus or towards the product? So now it's analyzed product, commercial product, but I don't know how popular it is in the commercial world, but in academic.
It's very popular in the design world. That's also where it comes from. You don't have, because that's actually quite interesting about this, it's not a static image, it is a dynamic image.
Yeah. So now I think they also have the scale. I showed the. Okay, now they change the figure even a bit.
Yeah, they changed it.
Yeah, they changed it. So it's now more neutral, not gender, not just a male figure. So they are men. Yeah. From here you can see they are quite popular in industry. So what is their clients? So again, this is go through. This is by Desmond. It's in the TU Delft. So he developed this tool there. And the next one is a little bit different. So from the previous, it's called the central evaluation instrument. You can see this is a really hard object. So different shapes and size. So for the spiky one, what kind of emotion can associate with the spiky? If you imagine now you're holding the spiky one, so what emotion you can associate with the spiky one?
Pain.
Pain, okay. So yeah, and about this undefined shape or this round, so supposedly each of these objects, when you hold in the hand, somehow have a certain emotion associated or attached to it. So this is a set of so-called sculpted objects to help participants describe the emotion, non-verbal. So when they see a stimuli, they pick up one object to show their emotions. So of course, if they pick up objects, like I asked you, pick up the spiky one, this is to show your emotion, then maybe I want you to elaborate why, how do you feel about holding this? And then somehow you can, again, it's like a mixed method. At the same time, you see the object she holds, and then you also can elaborate the answer or respond from the user. So you can also observe how the user, when they handle the objects, what the way they handle it. So describe the participant the idea of indicating the alphabet by objects of different shapes. So and in the beginning, you explain each object and the way they handle it. So instruct the participant to pick one or more objects that describe the emotion during using a system. So or after showing other stimulus. So then either you let the participant to do it on their own, or you sit next to the participant and ask them questions if necessary. So normally you do the interview afterwards, but maybe when you sit next to the participant, you can get more timely or prompt response from them. So, and you can also do the video recording, so the whole section, if you're not with the participants, so you play back and ask them to explain why you choose the object and then so and so. It's because when they're holding the object and pick the object, somehow the emotion will be strongly, they can remember better than they just place, work with the interactive system and report to you later. So this is help them to remember the emotion better, and maybe, as I said, the same. If you stay with them, you can interview them after picking some object, or you videotape them and ask them to explain to you later why they pick a certain object, what this object, what kind of emotion associated with that object. So this is. It tests across culture. Of course, maybe the first question will come to my mind, these objects may be only specific to a certain culture, but for their study, they demonstrate, I don't know which country they have test with, but they say this is multicultural. So, and they say picking an object is less disturbing than filling in a questionnaire. So, or verbal explanation of the emotion. So, I know, so also maybe the major difference here. And also, maybe this is more relevant and fun for participants because it's very unconventional. Filling questionnaire, people now look at the questionnaire already feel, before they look at the question, they already feel, hey, another questionnaire. But if they give them some other option to play with, maybe they feel it's more engaging in the evaluation sections. But of course, this object has some, you cannot just random make some objects, because they're already validated. So you need to get that objects, that set of P-structure or P-main objects. So, and then you have to stay in one place. It's not for mobile, so you have to normally stay in the lab. You cannot do in the field studies. And this is quite contradicting to the first point. So it's multicultural, but at the same time, so these objects can mean different things to different people, especially I personally would think that, especially across culture. So the analyze actually still much depend on the qualitative, how the user explains to you, so. So,
can you, through the analysis of these, so the participant picked an object, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it really, can you do analysis kind then? Like they pick that mean that, or is it just to engage them in a discussion, okay, why did you pick that and not something else?
I think it's more, because I personally I haven't used it, but I will think it's more for engaging.
Yeah.
So because there's now 8 objects there. So then somehow you limit it to these 8 objects. So, and then the round shapes, the egg shapes and the round shapes may not mean much difference. So, but then if they hold something, they have the action somehow will also help them to memorize the experience, and also they will be more engaged in the discussion, as you point out. So I would think is that the second function is more important than say that the spiky doesn't necessarily mean pain. The spiky may mean excitement for somebody. So then I think the purpose is more for really engaging, also to help them to memorize the emotion they have at that moment. Especially when you videotape back the interaction section to them. So then, remember I picked up this object because at that time I feel so and so. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So yeah, you can see the roller coaster trip, a lot of a range of methods. This is just a subset, and if you go to the All About UX, so we list 80 UX evaluation method there. So actually, as Effie Roto, she launched the website and she still maintaining it. So it was in 2010. It's now more than 80 evaluation method. But because of the copyright issue, somehow we cannot upload too much information there because the creator of the method still owns the copyright. So we can just show you there's something out there like that, and we analyze them based on these constraints or properties, attributes. So, and this is the participant in the workshops, as one of you asked, actually we asked them to categorize them according to the attributes we provide. So, and then we also categorize and evaluate the methods, so-called meta-evaluate methods. So there are different sources on these methods out there. So then, now we have gone through the exercise 1 and 2. So as I said, I'll just give you a snapshot of some of the methods, so we can find more here. So now you have some idea about what possible methods are there. So for your exercise 3, but maybe you can combine with your group work as well. So look at the search. You use the advanced search tool or browse method to see which of the method you can use for the scenario you have identified for the exercise 1 and 2. So I think that this is, for the rest of the time, you can do this exercise. At the same time, you can also browse through the R or about UX. So all the methods we have identified there. So, any questions? If not, thank you for the attention, and then we can try to do the exercise 3 now.